Hello, everyone. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. I see we got some guests. I see we've got some people on our side of the line. Like I said, if you've ever been around when I'm hosting before, I generally start around 12:04 or so. Sometime in the next like 3 minutes or so, I'll get started. If you know for sure you have a question, or if you pre-submitted in some capacity, feel free to let me know either way. You can either put it in the chat, put it in the QA, or just let me know that you pre-submitted it. I try to do my darndest to check for all the pre-submitted questions, but it just seems like they kind of come in from all over the place. So again, just let me know, and I can make sure I can find it. Make sure you're first. But if you have a question or anything like that, put it in the chat in QA. I see it's already kind of going off. Pre-submitted. Thank you. I'll check it right now. All right. For everybody else, as you're joining, I know we got one pre-submitted. But if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat, QA, something along those lines. And we can start putting some eyes on them. Like I said, we'll get started here. Maybe, I don't know, 2, 3 minutes, something along those lines. Oh, I love that question, Helmet. Thank you, man. Yeah, yeah, I for sure got you. Jeez, couldn't have asked a better one, honestly. Yeah, I definitely got you. All right, well, yeah, we'll get started here in about 2 minutes. 2 minutes here. I'm gonna go ahead and pull something else up while we're kind of. All right, about 60 seconds, we'll get started. So again, if you have a question, feel free to put it in there. Like I said, we do have one already. I will gladly get through the repository branches type stuff. I'll go ahead and put it in the chat for everybody. Everyone, here's the question I got pre-submitted, and you can just verify. I'm pretty sure I remember when we did this last time, it wasn't this question. So I'll gladly, just so everyone knows, that's kind of where I'm going to start. But thank you for joining, man. Thank you, everybody. Oh, I don't want to be on this just yet. Sorry. Okay. 12:05. As soon as my little clock says, oh, it says say 12:05. We're getting started. Thank you guys. If you've been here before, which everyone in here has been here before, I'm not going to give you the full one. Just be aware, we have a YouTube channel. We've got a solutions marketplace. We've got a forum where you can search for stuff, which we don't have a link for on there. But if you just type in decisions like support forum or something like that on Google, we do have these. You can look for questions, type in questions, as well as we have a whole category where I go in and I repost all of the Lunch and Learn questions with timestamps from every day. So yesterday, these were our 3 questions. This is when they happened, and this is the video in which parents them. So cool. I am going to get started. So for those of you that are just joining, so if we have some new people, I put it in the chat prior, but I'll read it out anyways. So the question's about repository. So it says, can you demonstrate how the repository branches are meant to work? Currently, we don't use them in our environment, but I'd like to get an understanding of how they are meant to be utilized in decisions. Um, great. Yes. Couldn't have asked a better question. So I personally, yesterday or the day before, maybe the day before. I personally made a quick video. You can see it's really killing it here with its 6 views. But I made a quick video about the repository primer. I'm going to talk about some of that and elaborate on how the branches work. But it's on that YouTube, the QR code. If you go to YouTube and type in decision support, I made it. And I try to keep it short because I know that our average watch time on our videos is relatively short. So I'm pushing for and trying to make shorter videos. But the question's based around the repository and how branches work and all of that. I can show you indecisions, but I think I'll give you the quick, like, couple minute conceptual, and then I will give you how it looks in decisions, ideally. So this is part of that video. I made this little thing. No YouTube work. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, no problem, man. Yeah, so and I try to keep it short. It's like I said, most of our videos are like 20 something minutes, and then when you look at the average view time of our videos, it's like way, 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 way less than that. So moving forward, any video I make is going to be around 5 minutes, trying to keep it short and concise and have multiple short videos rather than one long one. Um, Repository branches. Thank you. Appreciate you, Jasmine. Cool. I'm just going to show you, like, I'm not sure how this will work if I just do a preview in the web or something. Um, Maybe I can publish it for the web. Give me one moment. Conceptually, so while this is loading, repository, for those of you that might not be familiar with it, is kind of the storage ground that you will store revisions and updates as you are working your way to deployment. Um, Generally speaking, you're going to have 4 stages of your deployment process. That could be more, that could be less, depending on what your organization is doing. But just from a broad perspective, you're going to have, 4 angles. You're going to have the person who's developing the application development. You're going to have the repository where you store information and you store projects and you store elements and you store stuff to get pulled by the other users and pushed by certain users. You're also going to have the third is going to be, which, again, you may not have if you're on a 1-person team or a 2-person team, you might not have it, but quality assurance. So you'll have someone whose job it is to go through and make sure that what you did is working as is expected. And then the fourth and final one is your production server. So you have the 4, again, would be development, the repository, quality assurance, and production. The question is related to branches, which is a section of the repository, but I think that that's a worthwhile statement point. I'll show it to you in decisions as well, but I think conceptuals are important here. So, generally speaking, with the repository, you're going to have one common area where you're going to have those 3 categories pushing or pulling information. In an ideal world, right? Development's going to be the one who is making changes, and quality assurance is going to be only pulling changes, and production is only going to be pulling stuff. They don't want to push anything into the repository because they're not doing any development. In the perfect world, again, if you're on a 1-person team, you are all of these people. So, or you're on a 2-person team, you might be all of these people. But in a larger built out team, you're going to have development that builds projects, pushes them to the repository, and then quality assurance and production will pull them, as well as development can pull them when they have issues. Okay, so let's talk about this in a broader conceptual here. So with repository, here we're getting to the branches section, I guess. You have the trunk. This is going to work in a different capacity, traditional software development. Whereas in traditional software development, when you've heard the terms branches and trunks, generally speaking, in other organizations, you push information to a branch, and when you are happy with it, you push it to the trunk. Whereas in decisions, it is the opposite. So you start by pushing projects to the trunk, and then you can make branches to store iterations or to store versions or to keep yourself organized. So the trunk is going to be the heart of the repository. It's a central location. You can think of it as like the parent folder or something along those lines. You have a parent folder, and when you're happy with that parent folder, you can have subfolders beneath it or parallel to it that have different information just to keep yourself organized. There's separate folders, and again, this is a folder in an analogy capacity. It's not necessarily a folder in its actual computer science use case, but broken off of that parent trunk, you can have branches. So it allows you to work on different sections simultaneously, and it saves like snapshots in time of what a project looked like at a certain time so you can continue to develop. And I'll kind of show this out in another graphic in a moment, but essentially the main functional purpose of a branch in a trunk is if you have a project, you can push it to the trunk and then push it to a branch. It then saves a snapshot of that project on its branch as it was when you pushed it, so that development can continue to connect back to the trunk and work on these changes. So you'll have a solid snapshot on your branch, just a living, yeah, it's not living, it's a stagnant snapshot of how a project was at a certain point in time. And then you can, as your developer, aim back at the trunk and continue to make changes. And it's not making changes to the branch. The branch is its own separate. Imagine copying a file from your trunk folder and copying it into your branch folder. They have two copies. So you can continue to work on your trunk or pull information from the trunk, but you're not affecting the things on the branches. And you're kind of keeping these shells of the statuses between development and production. Okay. You can have multiple branches for a singular project. So you might have a quality assurance branch where it goes, you put it on the quality assurance checks it out, they agree. I'll show a graphic for that here in a second. And when they're good, they can push it to the prod branch. And then we have multiple iterations of the project. We have it how it was when it was in QA. We have it was when it was originally made, and we have it as it's currently in production because production would pull that. You can also send revisions, which I'll talk about here in a second. And you can check in and check out from branches or trunks. And when you go in decisions, it will show you when you decide to check out, do you want to check out from the trunk or the named branches? And I'll show you that in decisions here in a second. So here it is actually in capacity. So you can, with a project, you can, as long as your repository is set up, which you'll have to set it up, you can check a project into the trunk. So when you go to click on a project in version 9, right click, or in version 8, if you right click, you have design a repository as a deployment option, as long as your repository is set up in settings. You can check it in, and then by default, it's hard to see over here, it'll say branch trunk, and then you can import only my changes. Again, it's hard to see on the top right, but you can import the changes into this trunk. So it's putting it into one folder. You can then make a branch and it will kind of make a copy. So we can say, okay, from our branch, we can just go, hey, we want to go right to production. We don't have a QA team. I'm a one-person team here. I'm just going to push it right to production. And then the production server can pull from that while you continue to work in trunk. And you'll always have kind of a frozen snapshot on one of these branches of a project or elements as they lived when you put them onto the branch. So again, checking things, checking out, generally speaking, your developer ideally will be pushing and pulling from trunk and all of the branches. Quality assurance, if you have it, will ideally only be pulling from QA, and production will only be pulling from production. And this is like an ideal situation. Again, if you're on a small team, whatever, it's you 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 have to make it work with however you have to make it work. Okay, so here we go. This is kind of the heart of it. I'm going to blast through this because I know I've been going for about 10 minutes already. And I did all this in a 5-minute video on YouTube. So, um, you know, you can feel free to watch it back. Generally speaking, you're going to start by connecting to the repository. This little is not going to load because I'm just doing a preview in this storyline. It's not going to load, but this is just documentation on how to connect to the repository. So let's just say hypothetically you've connected to the repository. So you're connected. So the first thing is you're going to go, okay, I want to send my project to the trunk. So you send your project over to the trunk, right? You go, okay, I'm happy with it. I want someone else to check it out to make sure it's good. So you will push this from your trunk and make a branch, call it QA. So it'll take a snapshot of how that project was on your trunk and put it on the QA branch so that QA can pull the project down. QA takes a look and they say, hey, we actually missed some features. There's a bug. If I put a date in the past, I'm requesting a date, I shouldn't be able to put it in the past, or I want a validation on the email address, or, whatever the QA decides they want. They say, hey, I'm going to communicate that with development. So they communicate back to development, hey, we have some issues. Let's fix them. So in this meantime, though, remember, development's still working. Like your dev team is still working. They're not just sitting around waiting for QA. So they connect back to the trunk and they keep working in their kind of general space. They communicate those changes. So they said, hey, cool. Let me go back actually if it'll let me. Well, so they communicate those changes. I'll have to go back. They communicate those changes, and then um, development will say, "Hey, I need to make changes to this form or whatever the thing is." What they would probably do is pull the project from the QA branch back to their development server, make the changes, and then push it back to development. So again, because it's a frozen snapshot, you might have made some iterative changes on your trunk for a V2 of this project, and you don't want to launch these V2 changes, but you just want to make some kind of quick changes. So you say, hey, rather than messing with my trunk and then repushing trunk, I can actually pull from my branch how it was when QA saw it, because I've made changes since then, make the changes that they say, and then push a new iteration back. And you'll have two revisions on that branch now. And those revisions are automatically populated. So it'll say like R00001, R0002, or whatever. So you'll have two revisions, and you could say this is the good one. So QA can then pull the new project, your new changed project, and they say it's good. It's perfect. We're ready for production. So again, in order to keep snapshots through our process, and so that we can kind of keep these shells of progress, we can then cut ourselves a new branch and push that known good copy to the new prod branch. So now on production, we only have that good copy, and we don't have all these revisions kind of cluttering it up. We only have that one working copy, and production can then pull it and deploy it. The last little bit here, I'm going to run this kind of quick because again, I've been going on for 15 minutes now. What if your project's in production and you want to make a change? Something happens, something breaks, unforeseen, QA didn't catch it, whatever. An issue's been found, right? What ends up happening is now on our prod branch, we have a problem. We have a problem on production. Something's wrong. Development will then say, okay, I'm going to pull from prod because that's kind of a living, not living, it's a stagnant snapshot of how the production server was. I will pull from prod. They pull it down to their device. They check it out of the production branch. They make the changes. They can then push that new iteration either back to prod if you don't have a QA team, but because we have a hypothetical QA team in this ideal world, we're going to push our changes back to the QA branch so that quality assurance can take a look at it and approve it. And if quality assurance says, hey, great, looks like all the changes that we needed to make are great, they can then now push that down to your prod branch, and you'll have two iterations on your prod branch, an older revision and a newer revision. And that's how and generally this kind of process is the advantages of branches and trunks is you don't have like one big trunk with a million iterations and you're clicking trying to read comments about what is what. You're kind of creating living snapshots that stay stagnant while you can continue to work on trunk or work, in development. And you have these living snapshots. So you're not making changes and breaking things and just creates these shells between development, quality assurance, and production. Um, So again, ideally, development is pushing and pulling from repository, and ideally, QA and production is just pulling. Why would they pull from repository? In case there's a change that needs to be made. They can push to a branch or they can push to the trunk, and they can pull it out, make a change based on that snapshot. Can I clarify anything on that helmet? Is there anything? I think I have you unmuted.
No, that was superb. I'm glad I threw you a softball. That was
Well,
really, really good.
well, did I just,
That's crazy. Yeah, you just did it yesterday.
yeah, I just did it yesterday. So yeah,
I do have one follow-up question,
sure.
but if there are others, then we can move on. But my question is like we have multiple developers in our
Uh,
development environment developing at one time.
yeah.
I kind of see everything that you've said in the lens of GitHub a little bit, right? And so, that's never an issue where let's say that we have two developers working on the same project and I want to pull down a version from the trunk and he wants to pull down a version from QA.
Mhm.
That's perfectly possible, right?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay. Good
100%.
to know. Good to know.
Yeah, I don't have any on this. Let me see if I can. Let me
And
see if I can.
that's fine. Yeah, I understand that. It's
Let me see if
hard to
I.
set up, but
Let me see what repo I'm even connected to. I know someone in here. Does Jasmine have it? No, well, let me think here.
And the verbiage is you check out changes. That's the equivalent of pulling, and then you check
Yep.
in changes, and that's
Hmm.
equivalent of pushing. Okay.
Yeah. The only way I could ever remember that was like a library. You checking books
Yeah,
out of the
yeah.
library. You're checking
Even
books into the
even
library.
then though, like when push comes to shove, and I'm actually doing the migration, I'm like, I definitely, I'm scared I forgot.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I know that like yeah, so like I know that like on here, like I'm not connected to this particular repository. But like on here, when I go to check out, I can check out from this branch or I can check out from the other branch. Like these are just like living snapshots. And again, you have these revision numbers with commentary.
And
And
you
when you go,
create the branches on the repo, right? In the
yep,
repo.
yeah. So
Yeah.
when you default check something in, like let's find one that just doesn't have anything on it. When you by default check something in, like this A project
Yeah.
done in 2023, it's just on trunk, right?
Right.
But I can create a branch and call it,
Right there. Yeah.
yeah, QA branch. Yeah. And then or easier option is create branch from this revision.
Hmm.
And you call this prod branch. And it will kind of create a living snapshot of that prod branch. There it is.
Nice. Okay. Cool. No, this
So
is
again,
exactly what I'm looking for.
and I guess my folder analogy isn't actually that wrong, considering it does kind of look like that.
Yeah. No, it made sense to me.
Cool. All right, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yep. Let's go. So, any tips or best, and for anyone else in the chat, feel free to put questions in the QA or something like that. Any tips or best practices for working with object data types? My flows work, but there are warnings that won't go away as decisions doesn't know the behavior of the data structure until runtime. Ooh, good question. I'm also interested in the dynamic JSON step or generally working on it with JSON without defining a data structure for it first. Seems like I can get value from JSON by name to pull out specific parameters I want. Yes, that second bit of the second paragraph is true. Let's start at the beginning. So the first, this is kind of a three-part question. The first question would be, any tips or best practices for working with object data types? My flows work, but there are warnings that won't go away as decisions doesn't know the behavior of the data structure till runtime. To be perfectly transparent, I don't have the most experience with this one. I can say that generally speaking, yes, there's plenty of steps and decisions I know of that have those issues where it'll give you a warning validation because it doesn't know until runtime. I think that that's just marked on there just to let you know that like if something breaks, like maybe look there first, because if it's anything that's sourced at runtime, you kind of get into this game of dominoes. If one thing doesn't work, then a million things might break down the line if they are building at runtime. Um, I'll also unmute you if you ever want to add anything. But just to be perfectly transparent, I don't have the most understanding of the object data type. I just have not used it a whole lot. Um, I know we've used set property on object a bunch of times here, even in Lunch and Learns. Um, but that's more or less not related to what you're talking about. Mixed data type repeaters. Yeah, so anything that's going to give you a dynamic population of something is going to end up being having some of those validations to it, just because again, if you have, let's see if I can draw here. If you got thing A or item A that populates item B, that then outputs something into populates C, let's say populates and populates, you're probably going to want some type of warning or validation to say, hey, this thing is dynamically populated. Hey, this thing is dynamically populated. In case something breaks and it looks like, hey, everything's working fine, you could say, hey, let's check these things first. Kind of, and I would probably start in a reverse order and saying, hey, C, am I getting the data I want? Great. B, am I getting the data I want? No. So it's got to be a problem with A or it wouldn't work that way. So if C doesn't work, I could say, hey, C doesn't work. Let's check B. No, B doesn't work. Go A. So it probably even makes more sense to go this way, actually. Um, but I do not have a ton of intel on that one. Um, Object data types, my flows work, but there are warnings that won't go, doesn't know the behavior of the data structure till runtime. I think that's just going to be standard behavior. I don't have a ton of information on you on objects just to be fully transparent. Jeremy isn't here tomorrow. He might have a little more. I hate to say come back or go through support, but any information I give you is going to be a little speculative at this point, unfortunately. Um,
Yep, no worries. That's just kind of the general area I was interested in, but just tell me what you know, and I'm happy to learn.
yeah, man. Yeah, I appreciate the questions too. It's nice to kind of have something to at least pontificate on rather than just doing improv up here. Um, yeah. So what steps are you using? Just real quick, what steps are you using that's you're importing an object with? Like I guess I could just put an object on anything. I can for each through an object if I wanted to.
I was getting them a lot because I was using data pairs. So I'd like attach an object to a data pair and then later retrieve it, and it would just be kind of the
Let
data
me
pair value without knowing what that necessarily was.
let's just see if I can do create data and kind of will it even let me do this? Let's just see what it's even made of. What kind of validation you got in space? Jeez. Is that it? Parameter constructor, parameterless constructor. Yeah, my guess is so then we're outputting an object. We're taking in a data pair and we're outputting an object. So then let's go with another create data, map this into this test object two. And this is kind of a overbuild. I'm not sure if I might just be spinning my wheels here. And then my input of this, I'm actually going to take, yeah, cool. My input of this, I'm going to take the output of that create data step. And then for my output, I was hoping to get the option to like expose properties or something to see what object was even made out of. My guess is object. Yeah, I don't have a ton of quick questions. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. I don't have a ton of information for you, Peter, unfortunately.
No worries.
Yeah, interested in dynamic JSON step or generally working on JSON without defining a data structure for it first. Yeah, you can create. I think it's a worthwhile. I'll kind of just talk about a couple things, and this might be on the fringes of what you actually want, but if you have JSON language or JSON script, whatever you would want to call it, and you wanted to create types, I know you said you don't want to necessarily without creating a data structure first, but you can actually copy and paste a JSON file or JSON text into this, and it will make a structure for you. Um, so like, let me just grab one somewhere here. Um, so something along these lines. What would I go here? Um, in here, in here. Uh, again, I could be wrong about how this exactly works, but let's see if I'm not exact. I haven't done this in a little while. Create data type from nope, not JSON schema. Create data type from JSON. So yeah, you can just paste it in and it will allow you to make that data structure. That might be helpful in some capacity if you already have JSON language, creating a data type from JSON and just copying and pasting it in and saying, hey, I want to select all of these. Um, and it does the parents and children of it too. So that can be helpful. Dynamic JSON step or generally working with JSON without defining data structure for first. I can use get value from JSON name, yep, to pull out specific parameters. That is correct. Dynamic JSON step, I have also no experience with, just to be full transparent. This would be a good question for Jared, but he's out. Dynamic JSON. Good data pairs for JSON object properties. I mean, that's kind of combining your two questions. Create JSON from data is probably nice too. Creates an expando object that can be dynamically changed during runtime. That's pretty slick. Uh,
Yeah, that's the one I couldn't figure out, like the expando object.
Select JSON dynamics, one JSON toolbox. Okay, that's pretty easy. Sure. Yeah, well, this is great. Great discussion here. Um, let's see. There's another place that it maybe it might have something for you here. I don't know how familiar we are with this. Let's see if we have anything in this world. JSON builds. No. And just for I might be able to get back to you. What is your end goal to take in JSON and to do what with the dynamic this one JSON to dynamic? What is your goal? Taking in JSON and being able to use that data without building a structure around it?
Well, yeah, so we were using decisions as kind of a calculation engine. So we're creating like a very large number of different calculations that we want to expose as endpoints. So, they might have different parameters, a lot of different cases of what the parameters might be. And I just didn't want to have to define a data structure for every possible like
Yeah,
parameter case.
yeah, for sure. Um, okay. Every possible parameter case.
And get value by name, like it works okay, right? If you have one parameter that you want to get and it's not too complex, then you pull it out by name.
Well, let's just try something real quick for fun. We got a millisecond, and then we'll get to Mark. We'll get with you next. I appreciate everybody. Boom, 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 boom. Got too many tabs open here. Let's just try something because I still have that JSON formatted already. Or might have to go to data. Nice. Let's see what this has to say. Converts a string of JSON data into its respective dynamic object. The step accomplishes this by taking JSON via the JSON input, which takes in JSON in string format. The step outputs the data to its converted object, provides the additional path. Mm. So my guess is if we're going to do that, I always get these mixed up. JSON serialize. I probably picked the wrong one. I almost always do. Yep, I did it. I did pick the wrong one. JSON type. Yeah, so these are only for built-in JSON types, which is not going to help us necessarily. I'm not even going to map that just yet. I'm just going to see if we get a validation error before we get too far in there. Okay, so Okay, so I was able to paste in some JSON and get out the formatting. So let's see if we can figure out what type of object this outputs. What does this output? This outputs that structure. Can I reference that data here? Spando object is the type. Uh, And then we're outputting an object. I mean, if so, my initial thought is if I can paste this in on each of API, getting out to the various API endpoints, um, using this step with just copying and pasting it in here, just straight up the JSON format, I'm getting that data out as an object. The Expando object can kind of fit into the container of an object. And then once you're using that object, kind of back to the front end of your question, I guess, which is probably bringing it full circle on it, but um, you should be able to pull that data out. Um, hold on. Sorry. Um, cool. Yeah, I'm not too. Can I expose properties here? No. Let's see what our object steps are, and then I'll move on. Apologies for everybody. I'm just compare two objects, data objects, list objects, object is null. Yeah, I think I'm out of ideas here, man. I'm not really sure. See if we can just get some because those are strings inside of that object. No, no. I'll do some what I'll do, Peter, I'm actually going to add this to my little list of things that I think isn't a good talking point because I don't know anything about it. I'll reach back out to you hopefully today. I'll send you some information about it.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Cool. We'll go to this, Mark. Thank you for your patience and all that. Is there a flow step which I can use to find and fetch an ID file by its ID? Yeah, fetch entities should be able to find it. We do that in some of these projects. I can maybe find one particularly. Um, so, well, if it depends on also depends on what type of Mark, what type of file is it? Is it a file reference?
So
Is it file data?
yeah, it's essentially a file attached to the uploaded by form. So most of these files will be represented by an object with 4 or 5 different attributes in it, and one of them is ID, and that unique ID. So I'm essentially trying to build an endpoint that will take an ID as a parameter because I have a bunch of this IDs across different objects, and then I just want to download it. But before downloading is an easy thing, but fetching it via ID, that's something I couldn't find.
So we have a user action to fetch file references in folder. That's not what I was exactly looking for here, but we should be able to fetch a file. Let's see if we can just build something out. I think it's probably the path of least resistance here. Let's call this fetch file object, something along those lines. And do those files live in decisions? You said they're part of an object structure?
Yeah, they are. They are just standard files. So if you build a form and attach the file, that's usually represented by an object that the object has five parameters, five attributes: ID, file name, size, file date time, and then the contents. So if I just pull the very specific one from the very specific object, then I can essentially pull the contents to an endpoint and basically output it via endpoint. But I do want to do it via ID across decisions collected files. I don't want to refer to a very specific object where that file is stored. I guess there is some kind of global store for all the files that are ever uploaded to file store.
Just kind of comparing two different types here. File, upload. Sure. Done. Say this is file data. Cool. It's not helping me either.
Do you have any files uploaded to the current project?
No, not yet. I mean, I added one as a document. But that's probably not going to suffice. I added
I'm
one.
not sure how document is different from file. I guess it's all stored in file store, isn't it?
I think, yeah, document is file data. So it's if you're talking about the file data
Yeah.
type,
Yeah.
document is file data.
Yeah. So I guess it's the same.
So I've got this registration report, get doc ID. Now it's just which of these zillion tabs am I using? It's in here. And do you want to get that thing? You want to get that thing dynamically though, right? Somehow.
Well, I basically want to build an endpoint, right? Which takes one input, and that input is an ID. And then I want to output on on that endpoint. I want to output the contents of the file.
No results. Let's try this entity name, entity ID. Document ID is entity ID for this. Document ID. Yours will be entity ID. I just happen to their entity, a document and a file data are, or a document is file data basically is my sentiment. File data is just stored on the device. Okay, so we're getting results there. Cool. So you should be able to fetch based on entity ID.
Okay, and that's from the document
Type. This is for the document type.
type.
But so if you were to
Right.
file data, oh, you know what it is? You're right. No matter what, it's going to be document. Any type of file. That's right. Now that I'm thinking about it, let's see if I can find that. Yeah. So you're going to want to do the document type, fetching file data. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that now that I'm fetch. Let's see if I can go to the forum. Yeah. So over here, like, I've got, I'll find it in version 8. I'll find a project that I've got some junk in. So with this, are these file data? No, these are I9 application. What would I have? Where would I have that stuff? Where am I making something? Where am I making something here? Mm, that's file reference. That's not going to help you either. Yeah, because you're going to end up, I'll just do one more quick build out and hopefully this helps you out. Yeah, you're going to, if you're fetching file data, you're going to use the document type name. That is for sure true. Maybe not for sure, but it's in my best concept, it is true. If I go file data here as a type, I'm going to say this is created file data type. Right. I'll choose a file just to put something in here. Okay, sure. As a part of this file data, you'll have an ID, right? Contents file name is what you were listing out earlier. You'll have this ID that gets made. So let's say I debug, right? It might break, but my output data, it's going to give me an identifier.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the idea I want to use.
Yes. Yep. So let's see if I can just, let's see if even though this flow is kind of chunky or maybe not run right. Let's see if I can just populate this in a weird way. Document entity res sorry, inputs for, oh, sorry, document, let's go, um, document ID equals, and let's see if we can get this, document ID, select from flow. Wait, aren't we creating something here? Oh, we expose properties. Rename. So I'm still on document ID equals created file ID. And let's see what our fetch entities can see if it fetches it. No results. So maybe because it's not saved anywhere. Let's see what this document ID is. Same thing. FBO. FBO.
You
Yeah.
possibly need to persist it.
Yeah, exactly. Save it somewhere. What would be the fastest way to do that?
I think there's a save file or
Save
something.
entities. See, even then, I think, let's see if it'll let me map in this create data step. No. Hmm. See, this is even file data. Why is it not letting me save file data? It's probably something I'm missing here. No, that's an Amazon thing. Trying to move it to a folder or something. This isn't exactly what we want. I don't even know if it'll let me. See, I don't have it as an extension type either. Yeah, man. I don't think I'll be able to help you out too much, but I can. I'll give you this bit. I would try the document if you're trying to fetch it. Um, fetch file data. You should be able to fetch based on the document type. File data,
So you're saying as long as it's persisted, I
or
should be able to download it.
yeah, or you could load
Unless you want to try and do fetch all and just grab the first document that pops up.
fetch all
From
document, the
yeah.
first one that pops out. So you're talking about clearing this? Is that what you mean?
Just instead of having just grab the first, because the first one will just grab the first from the data from the document store. Then doesn't matter what the file is as long as there's a file. That's assuming you have one.
Talking about this?
Yeah.
Generate code buckets.
Yeah. So it looks like you have a file.
Yeah, I would just my advice would be, and I'll follow up with you if I'm wrong about that and see if someone's got some errors around here. But I'm pretty sure that if you're fetching a file data, and I'll email you a follow up, Mark. But I'm pretty sure if you're trying to fetch it, you're going to fetch the
I'll try
document
that.
type.
Okay. On another note, can you add me to the other follow up on the JSON structures? I also had this issue where I couldn't access the properties of after deserializing JSON. Just
Yeah.
trying to access some of the properties. So I could either do everything or nothing. But I want to access specific properties
Yeah.
of the JSON. So it would be great.
Yeah, I'll add you on there, Mark and Peter. No problem, guys.
All right. Cheers.
Thank you very much, man. I'm gonna go ahead and just because we're at an hour, and just so I can I'll get on this right away. I'll also hopefully send you guys an email probably within the next hour or so.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.